Hello, everybody, and welcome to week number 2 of our class. As you can see, I have our class schedule open here, which is strongly suggest you take a look at the beginning of every week. Again, as I said before, it's really set up in a weekly cadence. So we have the same types of we do the same types of things every week, pretty much. Okay, so uh, last week you would have gone through all the introduction to class materials, uh, looked at the presentation on financial statement basics, and actually took on chapter 1 and took the quiz. And as you'll notice, we will have quizzes on every chapter. Those are due every week at 11:59 on Fridays. Okay, so you have all week to do it, but my strong suggestion is make sure you take the quiz as soon as you read the chapter, right after. The retention is so much higher and you get so much more out of it in helping you prepare for the tests that are coming up. Okay, so here we are in week 2, and we are going to cover chapter 3 and chapter 4. It seems like we skipped over chapter 2. I think I use that as a capstone to the course. I don't see it as really being important to talk about really early on in the class. I think it makes a lot more sense if we put it towards the end. So that's why I took it out and put it at the end of the class. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So when we look at it in chapter 3, we see that we have our quiz, which again we'll be due on Friday, the 27th at 11:59. We don't have any assignments this week, but if you did, they would be there. There's going to be some videos you want to take a look at under content, and you have a discussion post this week, as you will every week pretty much. And this week it's about revolving around the content in chapter 4, global context of business. We're going to talk about tariffs, and we'll talk about whether they're good or bad. Obviously, you want to have read through that material before you do the post. Okay, your original post is due by 11:30 on Wednesday. Okay, your comment is due on Friday uh, by 11:30 as well. So, and there's really no leeway if you because it's a interactive exercise. If your post isn't there, you really nobody can respond to it, and it really doesn't do us much good. So you have to get your post done on time. There's no real late ability to do those late. Okay. All right, so let's look at it. So let's go. So that's our schedule. That's what we know what's coming up. I'm going to open up our class shell, and I'm going to go under content, and I'm going to go under module 4, which has chapter 3 in it. So if I click on that, that will open up all the material that's available for chapter 3. I put out these presentations. Students have asked for them in the past. I'm happy to do it. I'm not going to lecture to them. I might put some micro lectures in to this content. Micro lectures mean talking about a specific topic. I'm not going to do it this week, but you have the opportunity. I mean, I might put those out there, and I haven't put them in yet. But if I do them, I'll make sure that they get in there. Um, but it's there for you to look at if you want to, but it's not required. Um, I put videos out there and some other content as well, which I do suggest you take a look at if you're interested in the topic. In the case of, and I know many of you are, because in chapter 3 we're talking about entrepreneurship, new ventures, and business ownership, which several of you expressed an interest in, and which I think is very exciting. I think it's great. This gives you an opportunity to learn a little bit about that in this class. So there's a nice video on small business success. There's how to value a business, important step in buying and selling a business. I think that's a good thing to think about because that's really what you're going to do if you buy a business. And then it looks at franchising, the pros and cons of that. So uh, it's good supplemental material. Although when I say optional means it's not, excuse me, it won't be on any test. All right, so if I go under our My Lab and if I look at in our textbook, here's chapter 3. Very nicely laid out. Here, you've got the table of contents, so you can see the very specific things we're looking at. But I had this open for a good reason. I'm going to show you how to kind of frame your learning here. At the very beginning of every chapter, there are learning objectives. And in this case, there's 6 of them. So the first of the learning objectives is define small business and talk about its importance in the U.S. economy. So you should be able to do that by the time you're done going through this material. You want to be able to explain entrepreneurship and describe some of the key characteristics of entrepreneurial people. You want to describe distinctive competence. That's something that's really important if you're thinking about a business, is what just sets you apart from the competition out there. What is your competence? What do you do better than everybody else? And then talk about the components of a business plan. We're going to talk about what was happening with small business startups, what's kind of driving the success and failure amongst small business startups. Here's what I'm going to tell you. This is kind of a truth, no matter what business you're going into. Outside of the number one reason why businesses fail is the idea for the business was not good, not well timed, or just bad idea in the first place. The second reason is kind of an unfortunate one, is that you did everything right. You came up with the right idea for a business, you came up with the right approach to it, and it takes off, and you run out of money. So it's called being undercapitalized, and it happens all the time. And it's really kind of sad to see because you did everything right. You just didn't have enough money to make it go, and it can be kind of difficult to manage around. But I've got ways for us to think about that. If you're interested in talking to me about any of these things, believe me, I've lived all these. If you want to get a little bit different perspective, I'd be happy to talk to you about those. Um, we're going to talk about you're going to want to be able to describe what the different forms of ownership are of businesses. So we got sole proprietorships, partnerships, cooperatives, those types of things. That is one classification of businesses. Business organization, and the other one is corporations. You've heard about corporations. We'll talk about their advantages and disadvantages, different types of corporations that there are. And you want to be able to explain really what are the major differences between that and any other form of business structure of ownership. Okay. And these are very much legal concepts. So this is about as much into business law as we're going to get in the class, but it gives you a pretty good idea what goes into it. Okay, so that's chapter 3. Let's go ahead and jump right into chapter 4. I'm going to go back in here, and again, it's very nice if I have my table of contents open. It's pretty easy to get around. And in chapter 4, we're going to jump into a completely different topic, is the global context of business. Perhaps nothing outside of technology, perhaps nothing has changed the face of business more than the globalization of the world's economies. So it's really quite amazing how much that's actually happened. Certainly in my lifetime, I've seen it. So the learning objectives for Chapter 4 is we're going to discuss the rise of international business and describe the ways major world marketplaces, trade agreements, which are very important, and we're going to talk about alliances that are out there. We're going to talk about import-export balances, exchange rates, foreign competition, how companies deal with these types of things. Not companies, sorry, countries, and they vary quite a bit from one country to the next. Discuss the factors involved in making a decision to go international with your business. Talk about the appropriate levels of involvement and how you go about managing those. And then we're going to talk about the role and importance of the cultural environment in international business. I've done a lot of international business, and I got to tell you, it's one of the coolest things I did in my career was to go and travel to other countries and learn their culture, learn what their culture is about, learn how to deal with people. They change. It's incredible how different they are from one country to the next. So it's a interesting challenge. I'm just going to say I really loved it. And then the last objective is to describe some of the ways in which economic, legal, and political differences amongst nations affect international business. And there's no question that that's happened. In fact, that's going to be part of what we talk about in our discussion post. Okay, so that's walking away from each of these chapters. These objectives are what you want to know. I think I've mentioned to people, if you don't take notes, I think it's a great idea to take notes, and you could use this as your outline to take notes too. So in other words, you go through the chapter and you read interesting things that you think you want to make note of. You could put them under one of these headings, which would be each one of these objectives. That's just a handy way to do that. If you want to learn more about taking notes, absolutely reach out to me about that. Okay, so that's it for this week's introductory presentation. I'm going to do one of these every week and kind of give you a heads up for what's coming up and what to kind of pay attention to and look out for. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.